I'm Mike Lohanian, Client Technology Specialist from Dell. And this behind me, this is the world's first 52-inch 6K ultra-wide Thunderbolt Hub Monitor. It might just be the best productivity monitor I have ever tested. You remember that movie Jaws when Chief Brody said to Captain Quinn after seeing the size of Jaws the shark, he said, "We're gonna need a bigger boat." Well, you're gonna need a bigger desk. This thing is amazing. To start off, right, this is really here at 52 inches is massive, right? It is meant to replace a common combination that Wall Street traders use, which is a 43-inch with two 27 inches in portrait mode. So this eliminates that, basically takes a multi-monitor approach and let's squeeze it all into one. So I'm gonna review this. Throughout this video, I'm gonna give explanations. I'm gonna start out with the specs, then I'm gonna go into more in-depth about each technology product. If you wanna skip and learn more, look at the minute marks at the description and you can jump to the sections that you wanna learn more about. But before I start, I do wanna mention, I do work for Dell. I am a Dell employee. However, this is my own YouTube channel. This is my own opinion. What I say are my thoughts about it. And if I do say something wrong, on occasion I do, I own that. That is on me. So let's dig in to the Dell UltraSharp 52-inch 6K display. It is the U5226KW. All right, for those that just want the facts, let's just go through the basic facts of the specifications of this display. Like I said, it is 52 inch, it is a 6K IPS Black display, so that's different than a traditional IPS, it's IPS Black. So that resolution is 6144 by 2650. The refresh rate on this is 120 Hertz refresh rate. It is an ultra-wide display that is, meaning it has a gentle curve to it. The R rating is 4200 as far as the curve, which is very slight. From a color perspective, this display supports over 1.07 billion colors. It has an sRGB rating of 100% and even a higher spec, the DCI-P3 color rating of 99%. From a brightness perspective, it is 400 nits. The contrast ratio, and this is part of the IPS Black, is a 2000:1 contrast ratio on it. And from a pixel density, from a pixel per inch, it's 129 pixels. So that is a very good pixel per inch density on there. Like I said, it is a Thunderbolt Hub display. So it has Thunderbolt, and it is basically a docking station built into it. You can hook up to 4 PCs to this display at the same time and actually run all 4 PCs on it, and I can show that a little bit later on. It also does support picture-in-picture mode. It has KVM built into it. It has screen partitioning, which I can't wait to show you. Screen partitioning is really awesome. It is ergonomic. It has adjustable height, tilt, slant, swivel. It doesn't go into portrait mode from landscape. I guess you could buy a stand and do that. That'd be a big thing to do. As far as the stand, it comes with the stand. You can also buy it without the stand. If you want to mount this thing on an arm, there's basically 2 VESA mounts that you can do, or actually 3 of them. You can do it 100 by 100, a 200 by 100, and a 200 by 200. But you want to make sure you buy the right arm. Dell does have an arm specifically for this because of the weight of the product. It is a TUV 5-star certified ComfortView display. From an operating system, it supports Windows, ThinOS, Linux, and Mac. So my Mac friends out there, especially with that Thunderbolt. And the warranty on this, it is a 3-year advanced exchange premium panel warranty. So 3-year warranty. If 1 pixel goes out on this, you get a replacement. If you have a problem with this, a pixel burns out, you call Dell, we'll send you a replacement panel. You take that replacement panel out of the box, take this one, put it back in the box. We pay the shipping both ways. So excellent, excellent warranty. Besides this being a 52-inch display, what are some of the characteristics of the screen quality on here? First of all, I did say it is a ultra wide, which is a 21 by 9. And what does that mean? For every 21 units in width, there are 9 units tall. So this makes it a very tall and very, very wide display. From a color perspective, it is an IPS display, right? You know, as compared to a quantum dot OLED or a twisted pair or anything like that. I mean, the great things about an IPS display is it's got great color accuracy, has very wide viewing angles, so people coming from the side can see. And as well as the quality of an IPS display, it is very long life, it's stable. You can keep this for years and years without having issues with it. Now, I did talk about this is an IPS Black display. So IPS Black is a technology that was developed by LG in conjunction with Dell from a panel perspective. In a sense, what a IPS Black display does is it really refines the light that's coming through.
So I've got a flashlight here, and like I said, this is exactly how it works, but this is pretty close to how IPS Black works. If I've got on this grease board here, I've got these circles, and say those represent pixels. And I've got the one with the X on it, I want that to be pure white, and the ones around it, I want it to be, say, pure black. And the issue I have is if I use this flashlight and I shine it on there, you know, what I've got is, yeah, I'm hitting that pixel that I want it to be all white, but I'm also bleeding into the other pixels around it. And what that does is instead of them being black, they start looking a little grayish or washed out a little bit. But from an IPS Black display, you know, in a sense, what we're doing is we're focusing that beam tighter into that circle so that we have less and less of a kind of spillage over into the other pixels. And that means I've got a black pixel next to it. It's not being washed out by the white pixel next to that.
And well, IPS makes the blacks much darker, typically between 35 and 41% darker than a traditional IPS displays. And the contrast ratio is double of a typical IPS display. A normal contrast ratio on an IPS display is 1,000 to 1. This is 2,000 to 1. And really what that means is the white image that comes out of there is 1,000 times, or in this case, 2,000 times brighter than a black image on there. So really helps when you've got those mixed images, like you may see some here where I got light pretty close to black, and they don't really bleed over. So that's the benefit of an IPS Black display. The refresh rate on this is 120 Hertz. What does that mean? That means this image is refreshed 120 times per second. So you think about a traditional monitor, it's usually 60 times per second on a traditional commercial monitor. This is 120. I was like, well, Mike, what does that do for me? Really, when you start talking about motion, right, you're watching video, and the faster that image refreshes on the screen, the less you get ghosting, which means like an object will almost ghost across the screen rather than being smooth. So faster that refresh rate, the smoother the object goes across your display. So 120 Hertz refresh rate is respectable. From a color perspective, I had mentioned this in the beginning. It has a DCIP, so Digital Cinema Initiative Protocol number 3 of 99%, and an sRGB of 100%. And you say, well, what does that even mean? Well, I'll put it up here. I'll pop it up on the screen here. Something called a CIE 1931 chart. And this is basically, it's a funny looking shape here, but in a nutshell, what it is are the visible colors that the human eyes can see. sRGB is a standard, and it's represented by the triangle in there. And when you say it's 100% sRGB, that means by that rating, I have 100% of the colors in that triangle can be seen on this display. So what is this DCI-P3 rating? Well, it's the new standard, right? And that triangle is bigger within the CIE 1931. It's actually 1976 now, they updated it, but it all goes back to the 31. But what that says is that I am 99% of that bigger triangle in there. Now there's some new standards coming out. The triangle is always going to get bigger, but the difference between 100% sRGB and a 99% DCI-P3 is staggering. There's a lot more reds and greens within there. So there is a much better color gamut in that DCI-P3 rating. The monitor is also better for your eyes, right? And it's something we don't talk about often. This has something what we call a low blue light, hardware-based low blue light, and it has a TUV eye comfort certification of 5 stars, which is the highest you can get for eye comfort. And what does that mean? What is even blue light? Well, LED panels, they do emit a blue light. And the problem with blue light is it's very high in the energy spectrum, and a lot of blue light you can't see. And the problem we have with the human eye is that we can't filter that blue out. It actually passes through to the back of our eye. And that's what happens when you look at a monitor all day and your eyes start to water and they start to ache. It is the effects of that blue light. So the standard started a few years ago, and there's basically a 3, 4, and 5-star rating that you have to get to this for that TUV certification. This matches it. So what does it have to do? Well, one, there's basically, to get a 5-star, you have to have one very low blue light, meaning I have to have a low blue light to 35%. We're down to a low blue light of 20%, so we blow that number away. And basically what that means is we're taking away those harmful blue lights that you can't even see that are affecting your eyes, and we're reducing that down to less than 20% of that harmful blue light there. The standard for a 5-star is 35%, so we beat that. We say, well, Mike, if you're taking away the blue, aren't you going to take away the color? Well, that's the other part of the 5-star. 5-star says you must have the DCIP rating of 95% and an sRGB rating of 95%. Well, guess what? We beat both those, right? It's 99% on the DCIP3 and it's sRGB at 100%. So we have that very low blue light with excellent color accuracy. You also have to have an ambient light sensor, which this display does. Basically what an ambient light sensor does is through the day it may be dark out and then maybe sunlight comes out. It adjusts the brightness of the display based upon the environment. So the end user doesn't have to do it. So it's at the optimal brightness for the conditions that you're using. And then finally, to get that 5-star rating, you have to have 120 hertz refresh rate or better. We hit that right on the dot, 120 hertz refresh rate. So that gives us that 5-star TUV certification. All right, this is a really nice feature of this display. I mean, obviously it's 52 inches. It is meant to have multiple applications running on it at one time. So you really want to carve up the display based upon your workload. It's replacing three displays. Now, there's a couple ways to do this, and there is a fundamental difference between carving up a display and doing a partition of a display. And let me show you this. I mean, one of the great tools that comes free with your Dell monitor, you don't necessarily need a Dell PC or you don't even need a Windows PC. You can have a Mac. We actually have a Mac version of this. But the software is called Dell Display Peripheral Manager. And what it allows you to do, I've got it launched here, is it lets you manage all your accessories that you have, all your Dell accessories. So keyboards, mice, cameras, headsets, all that, but also your displays. So if I click here, you can see under Dell Display and Peripheral Manager, I've got my UltraSharp 52, and I've got a lot of different functionality that I can coordinate on it. And one of them is called Easy Arrange. And this Easy Arrange here is what allows me to go and carve up the display. So I can say I want it 2 vertically, 2 horizontally. I can do something crazy and do, all these different types of display settings. So let's just go to the most basic one, which a lot of people do, is just put it into 2 different displays. So I've got that now. I simply did that. Now, if I've got, let me minimize this and say I've got a couple of applications or say websites, I'm going to pull up here a Google website. I've got the U52 on there, and I've got another one opened up to say YouTube here, and I can just simply drop it and see when it turns from yellow to blue, that means it's in that shell. So now I've got, in a sense, 2 applications side by side running. And like I said, I can carve this up in any way I want. Now, that's carving it up. Now, there can be an issue with that. Even though it was nice and easy, You know, what if I want to do something like, hey, I like this video, but I want to keep it, you know, in that partition. But as soon as I maximize it, it takes over the whole display. And same things like PowerPoints and Teams, right? It recognizes as one monitor. When you say maximize it, it doesn't really find that that window. It just thinks, hey, I've got the whole display and I'm going to do it that way. This is where screen partitioning comes in. And this I really love a lot. Let me pause this real quick and reposition so you can see how I'm doing this, and I'm going to show you screen partitioning. Okay, I'm back. Now, to show you on-screen partitioning or screen partitioning, you've got to go into the OSD, the on-screen display, which is the little button back here. It gives you the menu for the display. So I'm going to pop it up here. And this is where you can have all your settings, right? You can control your brightness, the input sources and all that. But underneath here is something called picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture. If I go into that, you can see screen partitioning. And what I'm going to do is click that, and it's going to give me different options. So I could do 50%, 75%, 25, 75, you know, different, you know, I can partition this in many, many different ways. But let's go and show the same thing. I want to go 50-50. And so now what I've done is I've created two, in a sense, physical displays on this screen. So Windows thinks there's actually two displays on here. So let me rearrange this so I can then show you how this works differently than carving up the display. Now I've got this in screen partition. So I'm saying this is actually two physical displays. At least that's what Microsoft thinks, rather than one big display. And the advantage of doing this is things like to live in their own window now. So if I bring up those websites again, so I bring up the one and then I bring up the other and say I'm going to drag this over here and put it into this display. And if you notice there, Dell Display Manager thinks it's two displays and wants to carve those in two as well, which you can change. But now I've got what looks very similar to how I had it carved up, but this is a partition. So what does that mean? Well, hey, I want to do this video. Let me put this video going, and I want it to go full screen. Well, guess what it's doing, right? It's only living in that environment, right? Because it thinks that's the full display. And that's the big benefit of screen partitioning. You can take your applications and you can basically hard code them into that area and say, you only live here. You can't go outside of those boundaries if you do things like full screen. What is a hub display? Well, this is a hub display, but what does that mean? Well, basically what it means is I'm going to take the features that you would normally get in a docking station, the convenience of a docking station, of having one cable, and you've got this box here that you've got USB ports, Thunderbolt ports, displays, Ethernet, even power. All I have to do is hook my one notebook up to this and I'm connected to all these ports, so I don't have to sit there and plug in everything. Well, I'm taking the power of this dock and I'm putting it into the display itself. So that's what a hub display is. And you can see here, I've got a single USB cable here. It's a Thunderbolt cable that I'm connected to this display. Now, connected to the display, I also have the mouse and keyboard. I've added the 7022 UltraSharp 4K webcam. Awesome webcam, by the way. Those are all connected to the monitor. So when I plug this one cable in, I'm automatically connected to those accessories. What's special about this single plug is it also provides me power. So I can have up to 140 watts of power down to this. So you think about it, if you're on, say, a Dell Pro Max or a Dell Pro Precision notebook, a higher end graphics, they typically require more than 90 watts of power. So this will deliver up to 140 watts of power charging. Let me note though, you do have to have a newer notebook. It has to be support what they call ERP, or extended power range. That is a new standard set by, I believe, the IEEE committee that allows more power to go through that Thunderbolt port than traditionally. In a sense, it it requires the monitor and the PC to talk to each other to be able to exchange that much power. If you do not have that on your notebook, it will default to a 90-watt power charging on there. So do note that extended power range is needed for the 140 watts. But the beauty of this is, you know, I've got my power, I've got my peripherals connected to it, very, very clean. And if I go into an office and say, another user wants to come up, all they need to do is plug their notebook into it, and they're going to be connected to all these peripherals. They don't have to reconnect in. So very, very convenient. That's what a hub display is. When I go through the ports, I'll explain things of what are upstream ports and downstream ports and how to configure this system properly. Before I take you through the ports, I want to talk about a couple definitions, and sometimes this is confusing, but the difference between an upstream and a downstream port on a display. And the simple way that I always remember it, I think of an upstream port on a device is when you plug into the computer, it looks up to the monitor for the ports that it has. And downstream ports on the monitor are ports that look down to the notebook to connect to the notebook. So like I've got my webcam connected on here, I've got it connected to the downstream port on the display, and that port looks down to the notebook to connect. The upstream port is like that Thunderbolt port that I have up there. It's looking up to the monitor and saying, what do you got here that I can connect to? In this case, I've got a mouse, keyboard, and the webcam. So that is the difference between a upstream port and a downstream port. So now let's take a look at the ports themselves. So one nice feature within the ports are these easy access ports, or what we call pop-down ports. So you think about it, you come in and you want to connect something to your PC, but man, to get to the ports on the monitor, that's really hard. So we put these convenient, what we call pop-down ports. So you just press up and pop down. We've got 3 additional ports. And now, again, these are downstream ports. So whatever I plug into this, they're going to look down to the notebook to connect. So if I want to plug in, say, a thumb drive and transfer files, or I want to plug in my cell phone or tablet, you know, I can do those, or any other accessories I want to put on there. The ports I do have, you get 2 convenient USB-C ports, and these are fast. These are 10 gigabit per second USB-C ports with up to 27 watts of charging capability in there. That means if I want to plug my cell phone or even a tablet, right, 27 watts is enough to charge even a lot of the tablets out there. I also have a standard USB type A, and that's a 10 gigabit per second, and it does provide charging power as well. It's on the BC 1.2 power charging. So very, very convenient ports, and when you don't need them, you just tuck them right back up. Okay, so I've got a shot here. I turned over the monitor to give you a good perspective of all the ports, and there are a lot of ports on here, so I do want to kind of go through what each of them do. This one here is not really a port. This is for Kensington security lock, so if you want to lock down the display. This one here is actually a lock as well that allows you to connect it to the stand, so you can lock the stand and you can lock the monitor as well. Here we've got our power cable connection. These 2 ports here are HDMI 2.1. And then besides that, I've got 2 DisplayPort 4.1, and these are really kind of key when you're connecting multiple PCs to it. You'd plug into these ports here, or if you didn't, you know, if you had a desktop you were plugging into it, you would use this port. This one here is the magical one, right? This is the main one. This is the Thunderbolt 4 port here. This, you know, provides video and data across it. So it is, you know, DisplayPort Alt Mode 1.4 from a video perspective. It does supply power down to the notebook. And like I said before, it's 140 watts, but it's extended power range. So to get that 140 watts, your notebook has to support that EPR to go that. If it doesn't, then it'll be 90 watts down to the system. Now, this is kind of nice. We do this on our displays when we ship them out. We put these little orange connectors on here. These are the USB-C 10 gigabit upstream ports, right? So when I plug something into here, it's looking to find the downstream ports to connect to. So if I'm hooking a desktop on here, say I put a desktop and a display port here, and then I put the USB connection to the desktop here, then it will see things like these ports here. These are the USB-A ports, and these are downstream ports. They're 10 gigabit downstream ports. And you would plug things in like your mouse and keyboard, monitor, things like that. So a connection here is going to look for the connections that are on here. So up from the computer, down to the computer, right? And that's kind of the difference of those ports. So I've got 4 of those ports. Then I've got my Ethernet connection here. That's an RJ45 Ethernet port. It's a 2.5 gig Ethernet. It is just pass through, so there is no MAC address for that. That'll pass down through the notebook, which is nice. So if I've got it plugged in here, I see all these ports here. I see in a connection to the Ethernet if I want to do that. We also have 2 speakers on the bottom here. They're a little bit out of the camera view. They're 9-watt speakers, so you got dual 9-watt speakers, which is nice. And then the pop-out ports that I showed before. So that is a look at the ports on this display. Another really nice feature about the display, we kind of talked about screen partitioning. Now, what is picture-in-picture, picture-by-picture? Well, this display, believe it or not, you can connect up to 4 PCs to it at the same time, and you can share the whole screen with the 4 different PCs. And what I've got set up here, I've got the Dell Pro Max Slim desktop here, and I also have my Dell Pro Premium laptop connected, and I've got the screen split. So you can see over here, this is actually the login for the desktop here, or the small form factor Slim, and over on this side is the notebook. Well, your first question you may ask is like, well, how do I get from one to the other? Because the beauty of it is I'm sharing the single mouse and keyboard with both PCs. But you can see, right, that I can't go all the way over, right? So what I can do, and excuse me, I'll jump in front here, is if you don't have Dell Display and Peripheral Manager, say you don't have admin rights from your IT, you can do this manually. You basically go over here. Let me get this a little closer, and I'll show you. If I go into the OSD, hitting that joystick, you can see it looks like a little mouse. All I do is press down on the joystick, and it will actually switch. Now you can see I've got my cursor over here and I can't go over. Now if you have Dell Display and Peripheral Manager, you can make that a hot button to be able to switch, or it also has a network-based KVM. What a network-based KVM will allow you to do is just take your cursor and move it from one to the other. And as soon as your cursor crosses over, it will switch the mouse and keyboard. So right now I have 2 systems on here. Like I said, you can do 4. Now I want to talk about the caveats, because I've got one Thunderbolt port here, and this cable gives me power and all the connections to the display. There's only one like that. So on a desktop, if I go back behind here, and you're going to see how I have this set up, I've got a USB cable, and that is connected to the display, and that's what gives me the connections to the mouse and keyboard that are connected to the display. And I also have the, in this case, I have the DisplayPort cable connected to the display as well. So I've got those 2 cables plus the power going into the desktop. Now, if you want to do notebooks, you're going to have to do the same thing. You're going to have a connection to the video. You're going to have a connection that brings your USB ports down to or up to the display, or down to the display. And then as well as you're going to have your power connected to your notebook. So you're still going to need those three connections, whether you do a desktop or notebook. There's only one cable on there that gives you basically all that, which is that Thunderbolt cable in one cable. But you can do up to 4 displays on there. And if you want to see how that's done, how you do picture by picture, again, this is in the OSD, I can go click on it and go up and go into picture-in-picture there. In the picture-in-picture mode, I've got it split 50-50, but I could do something like, 75-25. And you can see how this is going to change the dimensions of the display. So I got 75% connected to the desktop, 25% to the notebook. And you can do a myriad of configurations there. And the more displays you have, the more or more PCs you have hooked up, the more you can do. And if I just turn this off, right, I just go back to a single display. But that is picture-in-picture, picture-by-picture capabilities, and again, you can do up to 4. So there's a cool feature with this display called PowerSync. And what PowerSync does is, you've got a scenario, we've got a big display here. There's not a lot of reason to have your notebook display up. Usually you might even tuck it back behind the computer when you plug it on. But the question becomes, well, how do I turn on my computer if I have the lid shut? Well, PowerSync allows you to use the power on button, which is right behind here on the monitor, to actually power up your notebook. So I'm just going to put my hand back here, and you feel for the joystick, and then right next to it is the power on button. I'll go ahead and hit the power on button, and what that's going to do is, as you can see there, we're starting to see the boot. That is going to boot your machine, so you can have the lid closed. So let me get it up here, and there we go. It is logged on. So awesome. So now I'm connected using that PowerSync. Let me show you how to set up that power on function, being able to use the power button to turn on the PC. So you're going to go in the OSD here, and you'll go to the displays settings. So when you go to display setting, you can go over here and you'll see a Dell Power Sync, and you want to make sure that that is selected to on. And then that will allow you to use the power on button to power on your notebook from the display. Thank you for watching my review of the Dell UltraSharp 6K 52-inch Thunderbolt Hub display, the U5226KW. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section. I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. Again, this is Michael Ohanian, Client Technology Specialist from Dell.